Welcome, everyone, to this week's on-air episode ahead of round 11. Tonight, we are going to be the three of us, myself, Mel, and Liam, but Liam is currently waylaid by work. He'll be joining us in just a minute, but in the meantime, Mel, how are you going? How's your week been?
I am good. Week's been good. Looking forward to the game tonight. I do love a Friday night game. It's nice to have something to look forward to after work finishes.
Yeah, and it's a showdown as well, so pretty big game. Yeah, I think from what I can tell, it seems like Port are still considering themselves in the race for finals, haven't quite given up yet. And Adelaide still do need this. They're not locked into finals yet, so it could be an interesting one.
Yeah. It's a really interesting point of the round to have this exciting matchup. What are your trades currently?
What are my trades currently? It's a great question. I'm doing what you did last week, and I've actually only currently locked in 2 of my trades. I'm feeling very nervous about it. I think Emma Carney to Serene Watson, I'm pretty comfortable with, and then Imogen Barnett over to Bonnie Toogood. I've locked that one in. I don't know what I'm going to do with Ashley Maloney at the moment, so I'm currently just sitting on that one. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I've decided to sit on Maloney. My trades aren't really much to write home about. I'm going Charlotte Wilson to Katie Lynch, Jenna Richardson to Sarah Verrier, because that's fun. And
I love that, yeah.
My Barnett replacement, I've currently got Gould. I don't know if that's a great idea or a terrible idea. But I've also got Lily Tarlington, who is currently named in the ruck for Adelaide. Maybe a nice segue onto the teams for tonight.
Yeah, no, I think it is. Thank you. I love your natural hosting capabilities here.
Can't turn it off.
So yeah, let's jump in the first game of the round. We've got Adelaide Crows and the Port Adelaide Power at 7:30 tonight, Australian Eastern Time, I guess. I'm not quite sure. That'll be 7:05 in Adelaide. We've got coming in for the Crows, Rochelle Martin and Caitlin Gould. Obviously, a big topic of discussion for this evening. Out, we have Stevie Lee Thompson omitted and Jess Allen omitted as well, which I have to say, very, very curious outs. Caitlin Gould, why don't you start, Mel, with why are you thinking of picking her?
Well, I think she's got great scoring potential. I really like watching her play, and she's nicely priced. Like, because she has missed a few weeks and she had that 0 in her final week that she played, which reduced her down a bit. She's coming in quite cheap. So it's kind of a combo of she fits my Barnett trade well, and I think that assuming she's well and truly fit and coming back in, she does have some great scoring potential. Nothing more solid than that, though.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I like it. I think she's a pretty proven scorer. I don't think the matchup, even with Port Adelaide in pretty good form after that win last week over the Hawks, I don't think the matchup will worry her too much. It's the wrist that really worries me here a little bit. I think it's a high risk play, which I think for where your team is at, I do love the choice. I'm going with Lynch, Ferrier, and Gould this week. My thoughts here are they sort of revolve around the fact that last week she was listed as a 3 to 4 week injury, and now she's come in as a test and has been named. To me, that is a huge surprise for a player who is, a key marking target and is going to have to use that wrist a lot.
Yeah.
A player who's probably going to be rotating through the ruck. I can't imagine Tarlington is going to go this alone.
No, sure
think there's at least a 50-50 split coming here. It has me curious as to how quickly she's returned.
Maybe she's just superhuman fit and ready to rock and roll, which is what I'm going with here. But, always good to hear other opinions, as I am very flaky on locking in my trades. Why do you reckon Jess Allen's out? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I suspect that there's something going on behind the scenes we don't know. I think she's been a little bit down this year. And I guess when we look at Matilda Schultz, she's about the most mobile ruck in the competition, whilst Jess Allen is more of that traditional tap ruck. So, if they're worried about her keeping up, maybe that's part of it. But yeah, it is surprising because, like we've been saying, that Anne Hatchard, who is named in the middle tonight, she's had to go forward to cover for Gould's absence, and yet the second you have the chance to play them both, you suddenly Jess Allen is out of the side. It's I would have thought almost both of them in the side, even if you wanted to play Gould primarily as the ruck, I would have just thrown Jess Allen forward. It's a surprise to me that they've done this. Yeah,
with such an important game, like who knows?
The other interesting name in this game, Sarah Goodwin, named at half-back. Almost every other week she's been named on the ball, or at least on a wing. Named in the half-back line. Do we think she's potentially lost that midfield minutes? I mean, I know it was a 40 last week, so even the minutes didn't save her that much. But I think, to me, the rule is the role that she had is pretty much entirely gone, and it seems to me like it's jump off immediately territory.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is just slightly further confirmation, if you want to read into the team sheets that much, slightly further confirmation of what we already knew, which is the role is gone in the midfield, therefore the fantasy scoring potential is gone, therefore a very expensive player that needs to be traded out. So I think this is just one further step. I wonder if anyone's decided actively not to trade her, though.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting one. I'm looking back at what the Hawks defenders did last week, and I can't think of any of them doing particularly well. It doesn't seem like a particularly great matchup. Like, I don't think it's a terrible one either, but I certainly wouldn't think that it's the sort of one that you target against.
Yeah. She's now just in the pot of defenders playing defense that could go big or bust. So kind of takes that guaranteed edge off.
Yeah. I think the one player that I think probably has a lot of people excited now is Matilda Schultz, no longer coming up against Allen. Do you think that this is, one of the better targets for the round?
Oh, yeah. I mean, tempting. I think for some people that are looking to, like, they've got very well-defined teams and it's just tinkering here and there, Schultz was probably already presenting an interesting option with Lucy Wales ruled out. But again, this is more just like an additional point of Schultz was going to be a great option before, but maybe Strom, maybe what's her name, Morfitt. But yeah, this makes it look like quite a lock.
Yeah,
I can't see
basically 3 weeks in a row to end the season. She's going to go up against the backup Hawks ruck, the backup Adelaide ruck, and then the backup St Kilda ruck. It's crazy that all three are happening in a row. Yeah.
Are you making the move?
I don't think I am. I don't want to spoil Liam's trades, but I know he's been thinking about it all week. So I think there'll be a few movers in that top 100 that are going to go the trade. The main thing for me is I don't see it necessary with Mim Strom coming up against Adelaide next week. I think if they're going to do it this week against Schultz, then they're probably going to do it next week as well against Strom. Unless it's an absolute disaster.
Well,
so I mean, to me, it's the same matchup 2 weeks in a row. Yeah, we'll see.
In terms of ruck difficulty.
Yeah. I think other players in this game that are pretty highly owned, Ebony Marinoff is probably. I'm not sure if this is the first time she's played the first game of the round this season, but if it is, it's the easiest VC. I think Port Adelaide are a great matchup. Are you running with a VC yourself?
I am. It's a low chance of making an error by not paying attention because it's the only Friday game. So, lock it in.
Yeah, no. Wonderful. I'm doing exactly the same.
What's your barrier, though? What's your cutoff?
My cutoff? Yeah.
For a Noffy VC swap.
When we get to the other games, I think there's a lot of reasons not to trust the other players this week. I worry about the North players just on the basis that they're talking about resting players. I don't necessarily think they're going to rest either of Riddell or Garner. I think it's more likely that they just put some reduced minutes on. So that could be an interesting one there. On the other side of things, I'm curious about Bowers after having 3 pretty dismal quarters and then 1 massive quarter to sort of save her score. I think she's either going to score fantastically well or it's going to be another, lower end score. And then the other one, Laura Gardner, coming up against West Coast. We've just seen West Coast do an incredible tagging job on Georgie Prasparkas and also Ash Maloney. I'm curious if they run either of those tags on someone like a Laura Gardner.
Yeah, it really kind of puts a dampen on everyone. And like Noffy's last 3 average, being realistic, is like 112 or so. So it's been a few weeks since the 135s, 140s into the 60s. So I think if I'm seeing a 115, like that's probably the best. Like that's on average with where she's going to land. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for with a VC to keep a captain. But I don't know if my expectation's too low. So we'll have to see.
Yeah. And one very random player that I want to bring up this round, I don't really think we've discussed them yet, but I was just listening, doing some prep for our final episode after the season ends, and I was listening back to who we called out in our black books for last year. And one player that Liam, who I think has just joined us, did mention was Molly Brooksby, who's actually a couple great scores in a row. Adelaide love her behind, and they're taking kickouts. Liam, any interest in Molly Brooksby?
Well,
of all players to arrive.
All players to have thrown to you on your entry. We've talked about the relevant ones. Give us some deep cuts.
Molly Brooksby coming off an 82 last week. It's a great score. But that was an absurdly high intercept game, I feel like.
Yeah, and the Hawks weren't particularly accurate either. So a lot of kick-out opportunities.
No, and like I'd say that the risk is that she sits a little deeper, but she is cheaper than Ella Heads, who I have seen kind of popping in and out of some questions online or some potential trade plans this week. I think that if you are in the need for a defender downgrade that can actually make you some cash, it is a good matchup to try and stream a, risky defender. I think it's a similar to play to, I don't know if you all remembered who I traded in for round 10 last year. I traded in Beck Beeson and then a Western Bulldogs defender who had their highest score of the season. It was Maggie Gorham.
Yeah.
It's a similar type of play. If you are lower in the ranks and need to take a risky play, let's say to get inside the top 250, top 200, I think you could have a throw at the stumps with Molly Brooksby.
Yeah. I think you called Beck Beeson, that big Beck Beeson trade, your best trade of the year last year. So,
comfortably.
This is the time to throw at the stumps, see what happens.
This is the time to really apply your football knowledge and pick someone from relative obscurity based on just a couple of things you've noticed and maybe one good matchup out of 2.
Well, Liam, I thought we've pretty much discussed all of the relevant players in this game, with the exception of maybe someone like an Anne Hatchard. I'm not sure how much of it you got to hear. Is there anyone you want to give your 2 cents on before we move to the next game?
I just wanted to ask, I'm assuming we've talked about the rucks.
We have in great detail, yes.
Did we discuss the fact that Sarah Allen might also be rucking as a chop out?
We had not thrown that option out there.
So the possibility, and this is kind of how I see it, is it's a Hatchard and Gould and Tarleton kind of rotation in the mid-ground and then also in forward 50, with then Sarah Allen as the ruck in D50.
Interesting.
Just a thought. I actually don't know the answer. It's just because otherwise I really struggle to see how the decision to drop Jess Allen really kind of fits with a coherent game plan to beat one of the more dominant rucks in the competition. And if, you can have a dominant ruck, but, they might just be dominating in the hitouts. Like Matilda Schultz, once she realizes that she's stronger than you and has more energy than you are, because she will physically impose herself, she will just grab it out of the ruck. She will fully wall you off. And doing that and trying to go up against that is such a weird choice.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sarah Allen is probably one of the few rucks that could defend against Matilda Schultz, because when she goes forward, she's really putting a lot of other teams to the sword there. So it's not a bad shout, really.
I feel like,
All right,
Liam, in your
that's,
absence, we've missed your ability to keep time with teams. We've just spent almost 20 minutes talking about one team,
Oh, good. Oh, good. And here I
one
was thinking
game.
that I would rabbit on for far too long.
I
No,
mean, there's a
your
lot of
order is
relevant
welcomed.
players in this very first one.
Right. Okay. Well, let's get crack-a-lacking.
All right, we're on to the second game of the round on Saturday, 1:05 p.m. Australian Eastern Time. We have coming in for the Swans, Rebecca Privatelli, going out, Caitlin Reid, who was omitted. And then for the Eagles, the one change as well with Kaylee Kavanagh coming in. And on the way out is Abigail Bushby injured. Any particular names jumping out to you, Liam, on this one?
Not really. I think the big question will be what kind of role does Jess Wrench play? We did mention it and have kind of
Yes.
discussed it, which is Jess Wrench playing on Montana Ham as a run with this week. We did see Jess Wrench do. I think we may have gone a little strong on the podcast this week with how good Jess Wrench was at blanketing Aisling Maloney. I think that the lack of kicks in Maloney's direction at any point in the game was the number one problem, and it was just a full ground press. But I do think that it's probably a more natural matchup for Jess Wrench, who is a bit of a brute in the way that she plays, not exactly particularly polished, but physically imposing, matches Montana Ham's game style, and you take in relative size differences as well. So I think that it could be maybe a lower score for Ham this week. I just wouldn't want him to be betting on it given her high ownership and the fact she has the Bombers the week after.
Yeah, it seems like an unnecessary risk to trade her out.
Yep. I was almost looking on the opposite side, thinking Wrench has just lost almost 100K as a nice defender trade to do. But that 13 last week, I mean, she was fantastic on field, not great on the fantasy stats. She's doing that again. She's not, even though she's lost a lot of money and is now looking nice and cheap. That's a no for a downgrade option in my books.
I think the downside is just too high a risk. You really can't be copying that low of a score at this stage of the season.
Absolutely not.
I think the other relevant name, Emma Swanson, we were talking about maybe getting another run on ball, has been named on halfback. Is that enough to dissuade everyone from jumping on there?
100%. I think if they're going to be going with Wrench on Ham and possibly just Bella Lewis running with Laura Gardner, just on the basis that Laura Gardner is less of a problem on the scoreboard, kind of impacts fewer. Well, at least in my mind, and I wish I'd looked this stat up before, she feels less of a problem on the scoreboard and therefore less likely to get a doubled, a full ground hyper tag, which is essentially what Pressparker's got last week.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are very few more damaging players than Pressparkers when they're up and about. You've really got to limit them. And every team is agreed on that, basically, is their strategy. So I'd love to see a Gardner Roberts head-to-head. I think that's probably the most likely outcome from here, to be honest.
I actually think it will be Ella Roberts and Tanya Kennedy. That is, Tanya Kennedy did a great job on Kate Hall last week, just following her around, kind of started her career as a bit of a defender, has the size, the speed, the defensive capabilities to roll with Roberts, as needed as Roberts rolls forward from stoppages. And he's also a kind of good one-on-one, all-ground tag type of player. I'm not 100% certain of it, but that would be my pick at the moment.
Yeah. And Laura Gardner, in terms of your captaincy options this week, is she featuring?
She hasn't featured in the top 5. I would have put her at 6. But I haven't had a chance to fully reformulate them just based on teams, because I think that not knowing what was happening with North Melbourne was my biggest concern with everything past. But I've kind of felt the most comfortable about Noffy's matchup tonight into a decent matchup for Kiara Bowers this week as 1 and 2.
Yeah.
It was just everything after that had a degree of murkiness. Laura Gardner drops out in favour of Britt Benici, who I think could go very large against the Suns.
Yeah, no, it's a great final round matchup. So you can see that one. Is there anyone else in this game that we need to discuss? I mean, I think Ali Morfitt will be solid across these 2 weeks, but I think Liz McGrath and then Steph Wales next week, I wouldn't be going them over someone like a Schultz if you have the cash. I'm trying to think. Cynthia Hamilton as a forward is a nice, unique pick. Could have a good final 2 rounds. Wouldn't mind a throw to stumps there.
Cheap enough to do it.
Zippy Fish has been on fire in the last couple of
Yeah,
weeks. Really.
that's one I was thinking. Like, is she too expensive now? But
Yes.
like, she's. Yeah, I mean, if you're doing a mid trade, she's very well priced, and does come with a bit of the risk. But those scores have been pretty good recently.
I think that the fantasy community should be hoping and praying that Zippy Fish just has a quieter last couple of rounds so that she isn't an absurdly highly priced defender next year. Because she is probably
Already
the highest. She's already in my team for next year at this point.
Yeah.
Unless they're going to play her at half
averaging defender. Yeah. I don't like that they keep naming her on a wing. Honestly, that stresses me with how I know Champion Data like to pull apart their rankings. It's going to be interesting.
She just takes too many kick-ins, I think, to be given that defensive status.
Yeah. And Charlie Thomas, I think amongst the higher rated trade out options, I mean, where would you have her in terms of like priority trade outs? Is this like a must trade?
Look, obviously it's team dependent, ranking dependent, but I think that if Carney is obviously a must trade, if you've got her, she's not playing. It's then a toss up between Goodwin and Thomas. At this point, Goodwin in defence is quite a bad scorer.
Yeah, and has a lot more cash to lose.
And that's I think that's the kind of, you are probably going to get a better sideways trade if you have all three to go Carney and Goodwin and just hope that there's enough kick-ins for Thomas. But I kind of looked at it. I think over a quarter of Thomas's scoring in the past month has been from kick-ins.
Yeah.
So,
which is just it's not the way you want to be accruing your points safely.
No, not at all. But
unless
I think
Montana Ham takes every shot, you're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Well, it'd actually almost be handy if she played for the other team, because Ella Roberts is not the world's straightest kick across her career. What was she, like 1 goal 9 or something in her first season?
Oof. Yeah, not ideal. Not ideal. I think with that, though, we should probably keep it moving along to the second game of the round. We've got Essendon and Hawthorn on Saturday afternoon. We've got in for the Bombers, Emily Gladman and Maggie McLaughlin. Going out, Mia Van Dyke omitted and Grace Brooker injured. The Hawks are making 3 changes this week. We've got Najwa Allen coming back from that hamstring. Same with Michaela Williamson. And Net Exxon making her Hawthorn debut. 4th club debut, I suppose, in terms of her AFLW career. Out, we have Hayley McLaughlin and Christy Stratton both omitted. And Jess Vukic going out with concussion. I think this is going to be an interesting round. I think Essendon have more of a chance in this game than I would have said 3 weeks ago.
Particularly playing at home, where they have outside... the Bombers against good teams at Windy Hill are a genuinely difficult team to play against. Against middling teams like St Kilda and the Western Bulldogs, against teams like St Kilda, they turn into mush.
Are you guys going to go watch this one together?
We hadn't discussed it yet, actually, but I will be there.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately unable to make it, which it's killing me because it looks like it's going to be a close game.
Yeah, it's also one that is just filled with fantasy relevance this week.
Yeah.
Most important player to talk
about.
To
discuss
go.
Yeah, it's the biggest trade-in of the round so far, and it's Mackenzie Eardley.
Yes, I want your Hawthorn take. I want your Hawthorn take on this. What is she going to do and what's she going to score?
So I think she can play all over the field. I think the most likely scenario is that she spends about 40% of her time in the ruck about 40 to 50% of her time forward, and then the rest on the bench. I think we've got enough key defenders back between Everest, Richardson, Allen, and then Elliott. I think we've got enough tall defenders that she's not going to have to play down there, barring an injury mid-match. I think her presence up forward will be helpful, but mostly I don't think Ellie Simmonds has got the tank yet. Still quite a very young player. I think they're going to need a lot of help in the ruck against someone like Steph Wales. And I think Eardley is a very underrated player. Like, I think the fact that she jumps around a lot, to me, like, it's hard for her to get that consistency in her role, and that can affect her scoring. But when she plays forward consistently, she's very good. She just needs the same role. So I think as having a bit more experience in the ruck, I think she'll be a handy scorer this week. I'm personally hoping for a 70. And I've said at the start of this, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with Maloney. The most likely thing that I do is bring in Mackenzie Eardley. I'm pretty excited for what she can do.
That's a fair call. I think the question will be, for someone like Mackenzie Eardley, if you've got someone like Aisling Maloney who's down on form, I think it's a perfect acceptable trade. It's if you've got one of the more highly owned forwards, it's a little bit more of a difficult prospect. So I don't think any of us are trading Woodland out. No. I don't think you're trading out Hodder, who we'll have to talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
I don't think you're trading Ham or Goldsworthy.
Yeah.
It's if you are running someone else, say, for example, Imogen Barnett or Charlie Mullins or Bonnie Toogood, that it becomes a more difficult question. Is she going to score more than them?
Well, I might leave you guys to ponder that one because I'm going to head. But thanks for having me for a little bit. And I will chat to you guys later.
Yeah.
Bye.
Catch you soon.
Ciao.
All right. So when it comes to all of those players, I think we got a few to get to that are still coming up. But I would say I would have Mackenzie Eardley probably above Barnett this week, but below Mullins, below Toogood. I think those two are a little bit more reliable, and they've shown some consistent form. I think the upside of Mackenzie Eardley is great. I wouldn't be expecting another 90. I think that's far and above realistic expectations. I think the hope should be for a 70. I think that's doable.
Is she going to outscore Laura Stone?
I would say so, yeah. I'd rather Eardley in my team than Stone at this stage. I think Stone to me is, like, obviously got a great role, but the reason they haven't been running her with that high time on ground is because the tank is still being developed. It's a very young player to be in such a high, kilometers run role, let alone being as physical as she is when she plays. The Bombers are a tough matchup for midfielders. I don't think Stone's going to be great this week. I'd probably expect another 50s score, to be honest.
And then, because I think that's the other thing with Eardley. She looked exhausted last week. Probably was someone who had some lower time on the track just because of the volume of hits that she copped. And that was only in 72% time on ground. Is that another question then worth considering? She only had 76% time on ground against the Suns as well. But outside of that, she'd been a kind of high 80s, low 90s TOG player. I think that could also impact her score this week. And if it's 70% time on ground, I think you could end up with an issue of it being maybe closer to a mid-60 score for Eardley.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think it's an issue. I think it's less of an issue because of the matchup.
That's fair.
I mean, this is no slight on Steph Wales, but she is returning from an ACL. She hasn't got the legs, like the minutes in the legs that Schultz has had over the last couple of years. So I think Schultz is like the best running ruck in the league, and Steph Wales is just not going to be doing, there's not going to be as much defensive running that Eardley has to do. And I think Eardley's got the physicality to be able to keep up with her. I think those tackles are going to be happening again, which is going to be great. So I'm not as concerned about the time on ground as I otherwise would be. I think if she was playing a Strom or someone else who can keep going all day, then I would definitely be concerned.
Fair. Well, I'm just going to quickly do a bit of a look at. I'm also just thinking about the Windy Hill of it all, just seeing how hit-outs and ruck contests we've seen at Windy Hill games this year. So feel free to talk about anyone else from this game, just whilst I do some quick research.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. I guess, yeah, I mean, we are talking about Windy Hill. I think there's a lot of Hawks players that have been pretty reliable this year based on their marks. And I think players like Anya McDonough, Tilly Lucas-Rod, Jenna Richardson, they've all been taking a lot of marks. I don't necessarily know how I feel about them in the windy conditions. I think Jenna Richardson, if the 24 wasn't enough of a reason to trade her out, I would absolutely be doing so. That's something that greatly concerns me there. So I'd have her probably above Charlie Thomas as a priority trade out this week. I mean, obviously Carney goes first, and I think we were talking Sarah Goodwin as well, has some money to drop. But Richardson, I think, is a concern. So I'd be moving her on if you can. Tilly Lucas-Rod, I think, is reliable if the ball's going to come to ground. So, and Lucas-Rod is an intercept player at ground level. So I think they'll be fine regardless. The interesting one to me is someone like an Anya McDonough, who's, I think they're having more impact in recent weeks. They've kicked 3 goals the last 2 weeks, but they've actually been scoring a little bit worse, which is a weird thing to be seeing happening at the same time.
So I have many thoughts. I will just say that the highest score we've seen from a ruck at Windy Hill across the last 3 games is, let's have a look here. It's Steph Wales 122 against Beck Ott. And then
pretty great.
It's a 70 and a 65.
Hmm.
It was a bit of a lower stoppage game from the Bombers against Brisbane. And I think that a lot of the time those stoppages don't happen because the ball just gets blown out of bounds. And all those kind of rolling maul tackles just, it ends up in a lot more lasso free kicks, to be honest. But I don't think it's a bad option for Erdley this week. I think the other question to ask, if you are bringing in Erdley, is what's your capacity to trade her out next week because of that incoming North Melbourne matchup?
Yeah.
North will play ball control. They'll try and limit stoppages. They are so clean. Once there is a stoppage, they just limit opposing tackles by their ability to just break from stoppage laterally and kind of the front side. So if you are bringing in Erdley, McDonough, Gilroy, I think there's even a case to be made that you can bring in Greta Bodie this week. These are all the types of players that ultimately you're going to want to consider trading next week. And so it's only if you have that capacity, if you don't feel like you've got multiple players on bad matchups or multiple players you feel like you need to have, then I think you're okay to trade in any Hawthorn forward, but particularly Erdley.
Yeah. Yeah. The one saving grace, I suppose, is the 29 break even. She's going to go up in cash. I think it would take a real floor score to get below that, which I'm sure she's capable of. She's done it this season, but I think, I mean, knock on wood, because I said this about Imogen Barnett when I brought her in last week, but I think there's a reasonable case to say that she's going to go up in cash, and you'll have an easier way of sidewaysing to someone next week.
Fair.
Yeah, I don't think I really have too many other players to talk about in this game. I haven't checked the price of Nat Exxon, but I'm assuming based on their history in the league, they're not actually going to be as cheap as one would hope.
Well, they're not even in. I don't even think they're in the game.
Are they in the game yet?
No, they're not even in the game.
So we can't bring them in yet?
Can't even bring them in.
Don't worry about it then.
I wouldn't be doing it.
Bring them in.
Also, there's well worth reading. There's an article up now on the AFLW website about just the weird circumstances that have resulted in Exxon being able to get signed. Rebecca Clotty has been mutually delisted. She's not played a game this year, and she'd not been named as an emergency across the first 10 rounds.
Yeah, just a shame.
It's just a weird one. I haven't got any more details on that. The article only went up, half an hour ago from Sarah Black. So fascinated to see what's going on there.
One other player, that I did forget to bring up. We talked about Bonnie Toogood ever so briefly. Would you have any concerns about trading into them this week?
Mild concerns, just given her current price. like her break even's nothing spectacular off the top of my head. I'm just trying to pull it up now. Let's have a look. It is, and yeah, it is an 83. So I'd expect her to be losing cash. You're probably looking kind of at the possibility of bringing her in next week, going into Sydney, who I really don't think have many good, key defenders who can roam up the ground. Their best defenders are Brenna Tarrant, who stays in D50, and then Alice Mitchell, who probably shouldn't leave more than the 30 metres away from goal.
Yeah.
So I think she's more of a target next week than she is this week.
I'm just looking at how many of the Port Adelaide forwards had a field day last week against the Hawks. I'm not expecting Essendon to kick anywhere near as high a score.
I hope they do, but I don't believe it will happen.
We've probably got different hopes here. I don't know. I'm strongly considering it just because I can't find a fifth forward that isn't without getting, Ham, Goldsworthy, Woodland, and Hodder to me sound like excellent options. It's that fifth forward that I'm struggling with this round.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Anyway, let's keep it moving on to the next game. We have Fremantle against Richmond. Fremantle go in completely unchanged. So that's great to see from their point of view. A lot of injuries this year. And Richmond have a couple changes. We have Maddie Shevlin and Avon Cleary.
Avon.
Oh, bad one.
Avon Cleary.
Avon Cleary. Wonderful. Coming in and going out, we have Ellie McKenzie injured and Montana Beraldson injured as well. Beraldson. I think McKenzie injured is going to shake up things in that midfield quite a bit.
Yeah, who then gets thrown in? At the moment, it's Izzy Bacon thrown in on the team sheet. Ali Dalloway is on the bench, as is Sierra Greaves, as is Charlie Wicksteed, as is Paige Scott. All of whom can play in the midfield.
Yeah, certainly a lot of options they've got there. I think, trying to remember from last week, I have a feeling that it was Sierra Greaves no, it wasn't Sierra Greaves. I think Sierra Greaves has probably had the biggest minutes of anyone else on that bench there this year. I think they're probably the likeliest option from my mind.
Yeah,
if not Isabel Bacon, who's there.
So Beraldson had 29% CBAs, Wicksteed had 7% and Greaves had 7%. So nothing.
Certainly not high, but I think earlier in the season we've seen Greaves get a few minutes.
Yeah, it's Greaves and Bacon who've had the highest.
Yeah.
We've had one game where Dalloway's been in the midfield, and that was in round one, and then really hasn't featured much since then. Paige Scott had one game at 43%, not much since then. Greaves had, I think the problem with Greaves and why I think she'll be in there a little bit, but not a lot, is her tank as well. And it kind of showed her scoring drop. She did look more fatigued kind of before she had a rest against North Melbourne. I suspect that Bacon is probably the first choice. She looked good. She had a good goal last week, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, really did. Yeah.
Which is probably probably the highlight of her career so far. Given that she's been a workmanlike but not necessarily polished player to begin with, that was probably her one moment of polish. I wouldn't be shocked if she's the one who's rewarded. She's obviously a more defensive player. Do you think that there's anyone worth tagging per se at Fremantle? Is she going to try and run with Kiara Bowers and limit her stoppages? But ultimately, I don't think that hurts her. I think that's great for Bowers. It's just, another defensive player to clog things up.
I don't think he can stop Bowers because her main thing is her tackling and then getting rewarded for that tackling. It's not necessarily the line breaking or anything like that. She's just stronger and an excellent physical player. So I don't think they worry about that. I think it's more likely the tag goes the other way on Conti now because you've really only got Conti
one player to worry about.
Yeah, and Conti's the definite one to stop here. So I can imagine that tag going up. I don't really know who does it. I imagine there's a chance that's why Dana East has been listed in the middle. Maybe that's the role.
And maybe you see a little bit more of Smash Mac forward to allow Dayton East the time in the midfield to be able to tag Conti. I don't think whatever we think about who plays, I think it's very bad for Richmond's chances of winning to lose comfortably their best kick.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's to be honest, I don't think this is great for Kiara Bowers either, because if a player is running a heavy tag for the entire game, then it means you go from having 3 spots to run your rotations down to 2. I don't think Newton and McCarthy are going to go fully out of the midfield. I think all of them are going to see a little bit of a setback in numbers.
Yeah, I do wonder if, Smash Mac and Newton, and to a degree Bowers, could all spend this occasional stoppage here and there whilst Dana East is off the ground. But it's a fair point to raise.
I just, in terms of captaining Bowers, I know that they're a popular target this week. I just have my flags on almost every single mid who isn't Marinoff, who is the VC. So hopefully it just doesn't, we don't have to worry about this.
Did we talk about Schultz? Like, it's one thing that was not in my rankings really much at all. Matilda Schultz as a VC option. If you're really looking to make ground up.
Ooh, yeah, no, it's an interesting one because, I mean, you'd think that a 115 plus score is pretty likely.
You would think so, given that's what she's done every time she's gone up against a non-ruck in the ruck.
The main issue that I would have is her highest score this year has been, what, a 120? Oh, what?
No, she had a
7, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty big one. Because most of her scores are 120 or under, and I would not want to take one of those. You'd really be looking for that boom score.
Yeah, one I'm pondering.
Other players in this game, you've got Emma O'Driscoll at half back. Richmond are one of the best teams that you'll want to be playing against. We saw last week someone like a Geordie Allen put up an 81 or 82, I think it was. Is she someone you'd be interested in this week?
Yes, absolutely. She's got the value. She's got the ability to put those 70 scores together. I think it's a matchup play that I would not want Emma O'Driscoll for most of the season, but she is absolutely the type of player you can target for 2 weeks.
Yeah, fully agree. Katie Brennan, another one here, her direct opponent this week, I'm presuming. What are your thoughts there? I mean, Brennan is coming off a fantastic score, but before that, coming off a shocking score.
Against North Melbourne. So hard to have a good score as a key forward against North Melbourne.
Yeah, probably as hard a matchup as it can get. But still, we've obviously got a good matchup this week coming into, Fremantle, and then the Gold Coast the week after. Do you jump this week knowing you've got the good matchup behind it? Or is it you have to be in she's going to be cheaper than your Mac Eardleys, right?
KB is...
Oh, actually, a little bit more.
She's a little bit more expensive at 705, but here's your advantage, right? Given let's just having a look at the fixture difficulty. It's Gold Coast next week. You don't have to run the same I have to trade her out risk. Because Mac Eardley, I would be very worried, particularly if Jess Vukic is back too. For the final game, I could see Vukic losing her spot. I could see Eardley losing her spot in the ruck, which has been where she scored well last week.
Yeah.
Whereas KB,
honestly,
3 goals last week, 2 goals, 3 against Adelaide for a score of 83. It's an eminently possible trade target this week if you aren't in the position to confidently say, I can trade out of Eardley.
Yeah. I do think that also that injury definitely contributed to Eardley's exhaustion because she'd only just come off the ground. Vukic goes out, gets concussed, comes off. She has to come straight back on, plug away in the ruck. That's about as tough as it can be when you're trying to keep up with a player like Schultz in your first game in the ruck in however so long.
Yeah, and just getting constantly kneed. Like that's what Schultz does. Every time she goes up, it's high knee, jump as high as you can. No, not much leaning on your opposition going on. It is all violence.
All right, I think it's time we jump to the final game of Saturday, which is probably, in my mind, going to be the game of the round. It is the Brisbane Lions coming up against the Melbourne Demons. For the Lions, we have Courtney Hodder coming in after being a laid out last week, with Sophie Peters going out injured. For the Demons, a couple changes. You have Blaheen Mackin and Maggie Marnie coming in to the side, covering for Sinead Goldrick, out injured with that eye issue, and then Lily Johnson omitted. I think there's a lot of relevant players in this game. I'm trying to think, probably starting from most relevant to least. Courtney Hodder's return. Is this, one of the more important forward targets this week in your mind?
Yes, but also looking at her price tag, it becomes a little difficult.
Very difficult, yeah.
She's very, very expensive. Basically, I have one forced trade this week. It's Emma Carney out.
Mm-hmm.
Then I need to figure out, do I want to try and force my way to get Courtney Hodder into the team?
Can I throw a hypothetical at you here, Liam? Because
of course, that's what I live
this is
for.
Definitely not something that is affecting my team specifically. I'm sure this is something everyone is facing. I think if you've got a Carney and you've got a forward that you want to trade out, and you can take one of them up, and the other one's got to stay at their own price. I could go something like Courtney Hodder, and then say a Katie Lynch and a Molly Brooksby, or I could go a Serene Watson and a Mackenzie Erdley. What's your preference on that? Where do you think Courtney Hodder is going to be that much better than the other forwards that it's worth doing? Or do you think the safety of the defensive score you're getting from a Serene Watson, who I think is going to be pretty reliable this week, that's more important?
Oh, that is... I think that the gap at the moment... I think that the gap at the moment for Hodder to the other, let's call them F5 options, is that great that it might be better off going Hodder and cheaper in defence. Looking at a Brooksby, for example.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
But I'm not it is a very difficult one, because then you've got to fold in the fact that Hodder had a significant enough quad issue that they had to send her to scans before they could comment on the severity of the injury, and it cropped up in weird fashion too.
Yeah. No, it's concerning enough that I'm not sure that the late out risk doesn't exist again this week.
And it is...
The benefit is,
it's
particularly because it's happening at home, it could happen very, very last minute again. I think if you've got someone like a Lauren Young on your bench, it would just give me a little bit of pause for thought.
Yeah, it is a brutally tough position to be in, and I don't love it. But I also think she's just in incredible form. It is undeniable. She's playing as well as anyone could hope, and we haven't seen someone like Ellie Hampson come in, who I don't think really discussed on the podcast this week, but we did see that Ellie Hampson was named as a test on the injury list. Now, she's not been named this week, which is good, because I think that Hampson had been someone playing a similar role to Courtney Hodder, to what Courtney Hodder is currently playing at the moment, or at least before her injury.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a definite benefit. It's brutal. It is one that I'm still going to have to consider in the next hour or so before we get locked out.
Another player that I think you have in your team, Charlie Mullins, named in the forward pocket, but with Courtney Hodder on ball, I can imagine those two might be switching up a little bit. Is that someone you're happy to run with against Melbourne, or are you thinking of trading?
I'm and this is kind of goes to my questions. It's like I could go Mullins down. I could go to Mackenzie Erdley and lock myself into a trade next week. I could go Mullins up to someone like Courtney Hodder. I don't know if... I just think that Brisbane have shown themselves to be a team that constantly change around the team sheets from what is named on a Friday or a Thursday.
Yeah. Well, it's one
they're
of the
not
things
a
that
team that
I think they were saying
sticks
at the
to it.
start of the year was they wanted to increase the variance in the different roles that their team could play, that versatility. Clearly they're experimenting, and it's, week on week going well, or early on I think they were struggling, but now they seem to be getting it right.
And I think we've just seen Charlie Mullins, Sophie Conway, Lily Postlethwaite, all move in similar parts of the ground, half forward, wing, half back, to the point where I'm not exactly concerned up front where Mullins has been named.
All right. Well, that's some nice vague opinions that we've put out there, where we're just slightly concerned, but we're leaving it open there. Let's go to another few players that I think we're also a little uncertain on. We've got Shelley Heath, Maeve Chaplin, both kind of playing a little bit of midfield, a little bit of halfback. Heath more in the midfield, Chaplin more of halfback. Are you, at the moment, I'm pretty sure Shelley Heath is one of the most popular defender trade-ins for Emma Carney. Is that a player that you're still happy to run with? You said that you were happy with her role being that contested tackler off the back of stoppage.
Yep, I'm still comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I think it's, as much as Brisbane are not an ideal matchup for midfielders, I think we know that it's going to be a game that will rely on a lot of high defensive pressure. And that's where Shelley Heath really excels. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think she is the perfect matchup for someone like Courtney Hodder in the midfield.
Yeah.
I could very much see Kathy Svark and Belle Dawes being players who will line up next to Kate Hoare and Tyler Hanks and play to some degree of accountability.
Yeah.
And then we'll also obviously have Ali Anderson in the midfield too. But I think that, Courtney Hodder versus Shelley Heath. Shelley Heath has the tackling pressure to get close to matching Courtney Hodder's pressure, has close enough to the speed, has played as a defender before when Courtney Hodder rolls forward. I think that's the perfect matchup this week. And I think, to be honest, it's going to be one of the most fascinating matchups because of how well Melbourne's key defenders go up against the Brisbane forwards. So I think that you've got Talia Gillard, who will probably play on whoever is the deeper forward out of Dakota Davidson and Taylor Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you will see Saray Taylor as the other deepest defender. The question then becomes, with Blaine Mackin back, where does Maeve Chaplin sit in this game? Is she going to continue her midfield role? Is she going to get an increase with another halfback to go there? Is she just going to stay with the same role she had in the last few weeks? Blaine Mackin comes in, Sinead Goldrick goes out. When you're going to get much of a muchness and probably a little bit of consternation if you do currently have her, given that the last couple of weeks have been bad scoring. If Mackin had been back and Sinead Goldrick had been out, I think she would have been a higher trade priority for those higher ranked teams.
Yeah.
I think with Blaine Mackin back, I think the variance is 60 through 80 for her score this week. And so it's just how much you feel like you have other players who will leave you worse off if you've got to hold them versus trading Chaplin.
Mm.
Given that there aren't really, she's a great launching point if there was a really high-priced defender to go at, but there just aren't that many of them.
Yeah. I think we're also a little bit still in the dark over who out of Chaplin and Lampard is going to be taking kick-ins, because the Swans really
probably going to be a bit of both, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Which both would be better than what I was worried about coming out of round one when Lampard had 5 and Chaplin had none. So 1 apiece last week, I think, was a better split. But if the Lions do manage to kick, say, 10 behinds, then what happens there?
Look, I wouldn't be shocked if it's like a 4-4-2 from randoms. Mm-hmm. Talia Gillard takes the occasional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that Chaplin is a lower priority than if you've got Sarah Goodwin by the length of the Flemington straight.
Yeah.
If you are not running with Sarah Goodwin, that Maeve Chaplin becomes a more tantalising option, particularly if you are in a disadvantageous position in your forward line, for example, and you need to upgrade.
Yeah. I'd probably say the same about Jade Ellinger as well. May have put up a 50 last week, but I think is going to be better this week. And to be honest, could still be considered a trade target.
Have they got the final round? Collingwood? Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, it's not high on my list, but I won't be shocked if she scores well for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. All right. And I guess with that, we're going to move to the Sunday teams. And look, I've done enough reading of names improperly. I think it's probably time that I hand back to you as our usual host of this on-air segment.
Yes, and we're going to go at turbo speed for some of these games. So we've got the Western Bulldogs against Geelong Cats. Out goes Izzy Pritchard, injured. In comes Captain D. Berry. Out for Geelong are Sienna Talariti, Caitlin Thorne and Erica Fowler, with all three omitted. And then in come Bridie O'Rourke, Megan McDonald, another captain in, and Bella Kay Smith. This game is filled with fantasy irrelevance.
I mean, what about the names like Dom Carruthers, moving onto the ball, has put up 70s in the past.
And also put up 30s.
And also put up 30s.
She loves to give away free kicks. My word.
Yeah, yeah.
I also think this game could be one of some very lean patches of scoring in quarters. They're playing at Ballarat, which, if you've not watched any men's football at Ballarat, it is often the windiest ground to be played at across the entire competition. I think it would be on par, possibly even worse than Windy Hill. And we kind of know from other places that can lead to some pretty funky scoring. So I wouldn't say we can be very definitive on any. I would not be shocked if this is the one game of the weekend that has no score above 100.
So a good advocate to get rid of Ash Maloney then?
Yes. I think that this is an improved backline for the Bulldogs, particularly now that Mualaloifi is playing. It just means that if Lauren Ahrens is off the ground or Elle Bennett has run up high onto a wing or just kind of burst through, there is almost always a steady, experienced head in defence. My big issue, though, is do the Dogs have a defender that is mobile enough to play on Maloney? It could be Kaylee Kimber, but we haven't really seen her tested like that. But I think in your position, Jono, Maloney represents too great a risk of another 40, 50. Yeah. I hope for my sakes you trade her out and she still has an amazing score, because I'm going to let people in behind the curtain here. Jono and I have a keeper league draft for AFLW that we run via a forum and some spreadsheets. And you and I are up against each other in prelim final this week. And I have Aisling Maloney in my team alongside Imogen Barnett.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be riding those very volatile scorers in the last month very, very closely.
Well, I mean, if it helps us move along to the next game, I would say the outs for the Kangaroos are going to be helpful for you in that matchup.
Yes, so we've got Jenna Bruton and Emma Carney for North Melbourne, both out-managed, and in come Ariana Gotterington and debutante Ella Slocum. And then for the Saints, it's Beckott injured, Nat Plain omitted, and then they've called it Nicola Zenos managed. I'm going to call that, injury concerned, given that she did look in a fair degree of pain after looking like she might have tweaked her knee last week. And in come Nicola Barr and Jamie Lambert, both off injury, and then Reen Karras in the ruck. We did talk about it on the podcast earlier this week. North Melbourne restings was definitely going to be a concern this week. And lo and behold, as what I may have predicted, Emma Carney was the biggest concern. Managed. I think the fact that it's not any of Ash Riddell or Jazz Garner is excellent, because it would have been very awkward and uncomfortable to have needed to trade out one of those premium midfielders this week, knowing that you probably would have wanted to trade them right back in next week. So that's definitely advantageous. And then I think that of all of the kind of premiums in this team that you need to worry about, I think Jazz Garner is probably the player who will get the lowest time on ground, or the time on ground that you'd be most concerned about, alongside an expectation that with Hetherington in, Emma King and Kim Rennie, as well as Kate Sheilor, will probably all get lower time on ground.
Yeah.
Given that they're all over 30 at this point and definitely going to be managed through the week.
I mean, practically speaking, does that mean a player like Erica O'Shea, Tess Craven, does that mean they get higher time on ground?
Well, Ricky already has very high time on ground off the top of my head. So, yes. And I think that, unfortunately, we're deprived of it, but Bella Eddy, I think, would have got higher time on ground. Tess Craven, quite possibly. I think Amy Gavin Mangan will probably have to spend more time on the ground this week too.
Yeah.
I think Erica... So here's my concern about Erica O'Shea. She has scored really well in the last few weeks, as Emma Carney has kind of come into a bit of form after obviously a slower start just by virtue of her interrupted preseason. And the fact that Emma Carney takes away the wing and overlap, halfback overlap game. She takes all of the control of it and orchestrates everything. Basically tells Erica O'Shea where she needs to be to get cheap marks across halfback and the wing. I don't know if Erica O'Shea necessarily does that this week without as well without Emma Carney there. In a St Kilda team that they don't really force teams into playing that overlap game style very much, because St Kilda's play very straight lines. It's a little bit, and it's increased so far this year, very similar to Port Adelaide. So I think that you might see a bump, but I don't know if I'm confident enough to say that she's a definite target, given that she's basically 900k. So she's the fifth most expensive defender this week.
Yeah.
In a bad matchup.
No, that's fair enough. Fair enough.
Are you confident enough in putting the C on either of Riddell or Garner? That's probably the biggest question from this game. Are you willing to put the C on either of them?
I currently have the C on Riddell. I have a good feeling about her score this week. I think she, of the two of them, generally has the higher time on ground. I don't think I'm as concerned. Nothing that I've seen from her suggests that they're worried about her minutes recently. Like Jazz Garner spent a lot of last game and a lot of games this year, she's had some issues that have kept her a little bit down. I can see them wanting to make sure she's okay. Ash Riddell has kind of just been going great the whole time. So I'm not too worried about the resting there.
That is extremely fair. It will be interesting to see kind of if she does score better, if Jazz Garner is rested more during the game, so she has lower time on ground cumulatively across each quarter. Because I think that's where Ash Riddell then becomes a higher tackling player. And that's kind of, we've seen that 151 against, which was in Tasmania against Sydney, that did take 45 disposals. But she hasn't had more than 5 tackles since round 4. And that has just been because she's just like, I don't need to. Like I'm sitting there, I'm waiting for the hands, just give it to me, and then I'll make do from there. Jazz Garner goes off and Ash Riddell becomes more of an in and under, get the ball out herself. I would be fascinated to see if that is replicated again this week if Garner spends more time off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with you. It's one of the reasons why she was the last player I brought into my team is because it took 40 disposals for her to have these big scores. She just keeps having 40 plus disposals. Like, it's actually absurd what she's doing this season.
No player has benefited more from the rule change. Well, actually, no. Maybe her and Laura Gardner have benefited the most from the rule changes around keeping the ball moving on, because their handball receive game, they play very similarly. They are probably the most natural players for running laterally from stoppage. and finding those little pockets to get a hand pass, just to kind of pick up the ball as it rolls kind of ungainly laterally of stoppage, is so good at getting the ball in those scenarios. And that's why she's just been able to sustain these consistently high scores on limited marks and tackles.
Yeah, 100%. Is there anyone else in this game we need to talk about? I mean, Serene Watson as a target.
We like Serene Watson.
Yeah.
Yep. If you've got the cash to go there, she's expensive, but she's good. So I wouldn't say no to anyone that's doing it if they're in the position to be able to. We'll quickly wrap up. We'll try and get through these last couple of games nice and quickly. Carlton against GWS, outgo Brooke Vickers and Madison Torpy, both omitted for Carlton. In comes Shifra O'Connell and Tara Bahana. And then for GWS, it's Alicia Eva injured, Taylor Levy managed, and in come Alicia Newman, and for her club debut, Vivian Saad. This game is again filled with fantasy irrelevance. I think that I know that I haven't exactly been hot on bringing her in, but I would not be surprised if this is a massive score for Dana Finn. The wings at GWS are inexperienced. They also play a handball style that consistently leaves their wings and lateral players running past the stoppage. Like all of their hand passing chains up and down the wing, they're never safe. They're not up in the air to try and loop over the top. They're always laterally, at a 45 degrees flat. And so when it works, it looks great, but they constantly get intercepted, and then they're left running. Their wings are left running the wrong way. I think Dana Finn could be huge this week, as could Maddie Gearin.
Yeah.
Who, if you are truly desperate, you're truly desperate, and you're running if you've got Ellie Blackburn in your M5. Would you facilitate some upgrades elsewhere, say for a Courtney Hodder, by bringing in Mads Gearin?
Yeah, no, I've seen people do it. I've seen people doing it with Prosparkus, and to be honest, I really like it. I think.
Well, you'd be happy to know that's what Installerine is doing at the moment.
Oh, great to hear. Great to hear. Yeah, I think it's just this is a role we know she can score in. This is a matchup that is very, very favorable. I think it's not as if any of the changes have made me think, she's going to get less midfield time. If anything, Brooke Vickers going out is a boon for her. I think all the signs point to another good game from Maddie Gearin. And the only thing that I might be worried about is sometimes the Giants tend to have low stoppage games. That could be her only limitation. Beyond that, I think all things are great signs.
Agreed. And I think that might be the sole question of relevancy from this game.
Well,
because I'm not targeting Cambridge McCormick at the moment.
That's the other thing, right? A lot of people are targeting McCormick. I would probably go Emily Pease first.
And I hate that that's true. I really do.
It's
not your favorite choices.
Oh no, it's like Cambridge McCormick. On a better team, and I said this earlier, on a better team, Cambridge McCormick is comfortably a top 5 defender in the competition for fantasy. And I would say one of the best defenders in the competition. Just full stop.
Yeah.
It is just the fact that she takes no kick-ins and is constantly overlooked by a player that is you might call someone ham-fisted. Emily Pease is ham-footed.
You're not a fan.
No,
but it is 21 kick-ins in the last 3 weeks to 1 from McCormick. It's a pretty notable difference, and I can't see that changing. I can see Carlton kicking a lot of behinds. I think this is going to be one where she does pretty well again, Emily Pease.
Yeah, I would say mid to high 60s, maybe low 70s for Emily Pease. Well, let's talk about some players that I like more. Gold Coast against Collingwood. You talked about the game of the round being Brisbane-Melbourne. I think it's this matchup, which is 18th versus 17th. Yeah, so it's the Suns have omitted Kira Bisher and Lauren Bella, and Jamie Stanton is injured. In comes Taylor Gregory, Ellie Virus, and Clara Fitzpatrick. And then for Collingwood is Kellyanne Hogan injured, and Georgia Clark injured, and in comes Michaela Hyde and Selena Carlson. Big question from this game is Imogen Barnett. Is she going to be in the ruck? As a non-owner of Imogen Barnett in Classic, I would have much preferred Lauren Bella be named because I have just kind of having looked at the games that Imogen Barnett has spent some more time forward, it has been against the more hit-out dominant rucks, and that is obviously it's Alice Edmonds, but then also to some degree it is true of Poppy Kelly. I'd say that they are similar styled rucks, and that's when Sabs Frederick has been given more time. Now that it's Taylor Gregory and Darcy Davis, unless
Stronger
there is,
bodied ones, yeah.
I think that Imogen Barnett might end up, maybe it's closer to pure 50-50. It's not the 10% that she was rucking in the second half last week, but it's not the low 60% that she's been getting for most of the season. And then you add in the fact that she's playing forward.
I think she had pretty much no time in the second half, but she had pretty much not sole, but like the majority of the rucking in the first half. And still only scrapped to a 40 by the end of the game. I worry greatly about this. I think this is a trade in my book. I know last time they bounced back from this, but last time they were named in the ruck the following week, which gave me a lot more confidence that it was going to be going back to that normal role. I'm pretty terrified that this is going to be another low score.
I too am terrified because as much as I don't own in Classic, as I said earlier, she is in my Keeper League team, and you and I are up against each other this week in a very important matchup. And so I am concerned. Where does she rank in concern amongst that gaggle of defenders that we've been talking about a lot?
I probably have her after nearly all of them.
This is my thought too.
Yeah. I think the forwards that you have are probably not as big of an issue this week. I think Gold Coast, even as a forward, she could still score better than she has in previous matchups. I don't think it's going to be spectacular, but at least like the drop.
If you get 60,
huge. Yeah,
if you get 60 from your F5, it hasn't hurt you this year. You have to obviously be nailing things across the rest of your team to have a good score for the week. But I think we've seen consistently that a 60 at F5, and then let's say maybe half of the weeks this year, 60 from your D5 have been survivable.
Can I just put it out there? I reckon I'm ranked pretty well right now, and I reckon I've had 2 rounds this year where my worst forward has been better than 60. I think a 60 is pretty phenomenal from your F5, to be honest.
Well, you're talking to someone who's got a phenomenal side from last week. But I would say the same of me. I've had most weeks where at least one of my forwards has been bad. I even managed to have a high ranking one week when I had bloody Blaine Bogue in the teens. So I think it's more than holdable. I don't know when you guys actually started, but based on 5:30, we have now been going for an hour and 15 minutes. John, we might need to have a conversation afterwards about speed and precision when we do these on-airs hosting. I kid.
This is experience versus just going on pure vibes here.
You think I'm not operating on pure vibes the whole time? You don't know me as well as I thought. I don't know if you've had a chance to have a look at some of the questions that have been flying around. I know that I have had a bunch of notifications coming on through. Is there any that have? Let's have a quick squeeze and see if there's any very interesting ones that we maybe want to end with. Okay. Here's a nice little question that sums up a lot of our discussion, which is, which trade do we prefer? Chaplin to Heath, Too Good to Hodder.
Chaplin to Heath, Too Good to Hodder. I mean, this person's team is in great nick. I would probably go Too Good to Hodder. I think Chaplin's going to be more reliable, and I don't think Heath is. This is a tough one.
I think it's Too Good to Hodder, just on the basis that this is your trades that you're choosing between. You probably aren't wanting for cash, right? Chaplin to Heath opens up a bunch of cash for you, which is one of the reasons you might consider doing it, given that you could get a similar score from the pair of them. I think that the other trade, you are much more likely to see 20 points put on Bonnie Toogood's head.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'd agree with that.
So I think that that's where that's where I'd lean. Rank these, this is from Braddles, rank these three in terms of trade up priority: Goodwin, Barnett, and Stone.
Ooh, I would probably go Goodwin out first, Stone out second, Barnett out third. I think Stone, like with the North Melbourne matchup, you want them out next week. So I would have them ahead of Barnett. But Goodwin's got cash to lose, which is the key thing here. And you can probably get a more reliable defender trading her out than you can a forward trading out Stone or Barnett.
It's a good call. I'm on board with it. All right. There's a lot of questions about the players that we have already discussed. I don't know, John, if you had any that have jumped out before
I think
wrap up.
One that I thought was pretty interesting in the forward line, Nick Turner has asked, contemplating Gould over Eardley, and would love your thoughts. How would you rank between those two? I know they're options for a lot of people.
Gould versus Eardley. How much do we love going Gould off a broken wrist? I don't know if I like it enough, is my concern.
Yeah, I think the risk of Gould is higher. I can definitely see, particularly coming back so quickly when she was named a while to come back just last week. I can see her having a big ruck or marking contest and just them going, something's not right. We'll take her off and she'll be off for the second half. I can see a world where that happens. I don't think that is anywhere near as likely with a player like Eardley.
Fair call. All right. Well, I think then we might wrap up. It's been a bumper-long episode. Jono, congratulations for the first on-air hosting gig of the season.
Thank you.
Valiant.
Never happen again. Yeah. Wonderful.
I did notice the lovely little palm off for Sunday games. I think that's entirely fair, given I
was reading the names coming up going, this is not going to go well. Yeah.
Well, hopefully everyone's weekends are better than Jono's pronunciation of Montana Berroldson. And hopefully it's a successful week of training for everyone. Second last set of trades of the year. I know that it's a bit of chaos every Friday night, but we're all going to miss it as soon as the home and away season ends. As always, you will hear our podcast come out on Tuesday morning and Fantasy Fix on Wednesday at about 11 o'clock to midday. Hope you will hear from us all very soon, but until that time, happy trading. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks everyone.